You want to get to me, you've got to make my gatekeepers like you.
Jeff Watson.
Guys, you just opened up a floodgate.
When you put a powerful lawyer that everybody looks up to on a podcast with a marketing and a systems genius,
John Cochran.
Investors all across the entire country, they're making massive mistakes right now, and they need a better playbook.
Phil, not ignore.
Every single thing that we deliver in this podcast,
Stay in those strategies. Stay in those strategies.
insider information only.
Stay in those strategies.
Live from Real Estate U and around the globe. This is the Real Estate Investors Playbook.
Step on the gas. Give me the green light, 'cause I'm ready to go. Let's have a good time.
All right, so Jeff, I want to cover this, on today's podcast. This is episode number 2. And, so many investors, they sit there and they struggle. They're like,
They're stuck. They're paralyzed.
they're paralyzed. They don't know exactly what to do into this market that we're in right now. One of the biggest mistakes that I see investors make is they find a great deal, right? Hopefully it came from a great lead source like a relationship or something like that. They find a great deal. And then they start analyzing this deal and it's like, man, I've got 2 different avenues that I can go. This thing needs a lot of repairs. It's in a great area that I can repair it all day long. It's good, solid. I can rehab it. It's in a great school zone. Everything is good. But they only look at it as one exit strategy, right? They look at it as one exit strategy of, well, it needs work. It's in a great school system. I'm going to go out there and rehab this property. But what I found in my business and what I've seen from a lot of other, investors' businesses is that if you really take a look and you really run the numbers, you can take a deal that could be a really, really fat deal that looks like a fat deal, smells like a fat deal. It is a fat deal on paper. But then in reality, you go out there and you rehab this thing, and that fat deal, that fat $60,000 profit turns into a $40,000 or a $30,000 profit real quick because you go over budget. You go, you have so much, more in repairs than what you thought.
It got put on a diet.
It got put onto a diet would be a great way to say it.
Yep.
And they look back and we can't do these deals, and get involved with a rehab or something like that, and then go back in time and wish that we would have wholesaled it out.
And John, what that scenario you described gets played out hundreds of times a day all across America in the various offices that real estate investors are playing in. And you know why it gets played out that way? Is because that investor doesn't open up their playbook. Mm-hmm. If they would open up their playbook and they would turn to the appropriate page of the playbook would say, analyze it for 3 different exit strategies.
Right.
Run the numbers, 3 different scenarios. How much money will I make if I wholesale it? How much money will I make if I buy, fix, and resell? And how much money will I make if I buy, fix, and sell owner-occupant, pass off the paper, whatever they want to do? They got to run all 3 scenarios.
And they typically will only run one.
Because they don't open up a playbook.
Right. They don't understand that there is multiple options. There's multiple routes that they could take, a specific play on a deal.
And this is one of the things that just I don't get it. And I'm going to use an analogy that I hope the vast majority of our audience understands, because you and I are literally half a mile away from where the Ohio State Buckeyes play football. And you've never seen a football team where they snap the ball and a player doesn't know what they're doing. Why? Because they have a specific play out of the playbook.
And they practice it.
They practice it.
They look at all their options.
Right.
And they look at the defense. They see how the defense is lined up. They might even have to call an audible on the line, but they know exactly the route that they're going to run based upon all that,
right,
which makes them score touchdowns.
But over and over again, I see real estate investors that go, I don't know if it's a deal. I don't know if I got a deal. I don't know if it is a deal. And if it is a deal, I don't know what to do with it. Why? Well, it's because you don't have a playbook. Mm-hmm. You're going to hear me say playbook over and over and over again. I'm going to hear you say it over and over again, because that's what this podcast is all about. It's about the real estate investing playbook, and it's about knowing what to do when something happens.
Mm-hmm. Let's go through a deal, okay? Let's go through a specific deal. I'm just going to run some general numbers, on this, and I want us to look at our playbook. And I want us to, for all the thousands of people watching or listening this, how would we analyze this, and what's going to be the best decision? What's going to be the best route for us to run on this deal that I'm going to give, which smells like a rehab deal all day long? Now, maybe it is a rehab deal. We can go through this, but I want to throw out some general numbers on this, just some very easy, basic math, so that everybody can follow us as they're looking at this. So, let's say that we found a great deal from a motivated seller. It was from a relationship. That doesn't really matter. And let's say that this is a great deal. It's worth $170,000 all day long as far as a rehab. $170,000.
Actually, after repair value, 170.
After repair value is 170, and let's say that we understood what the buyer or what the seller really needed, right? We listened to the seller when we were in the seller meeting. We got out what they needed for this property. So a lot of times it's not even money. See, that's what most investors, they're like, oh my gosh, I got to offer, it's got to be money, money, money. And it really doesn't. You just got to fix their problem, whatever it is, whether it's money or whether it's helping them move or whatever it is. But we're able to negotiate, and they need $60,000. $60,000. So this thing's worth, $170,000. Okay.
Well, what's it going to cost to fix it?
It's going to cost $60,000 to fix this up. So you buy it for $60,000.
Mm-hmm.
You rehab this thing. It would cost $60,000 to get it up to worth $170,000. So you're all in it for $120,000, and then an investor would normally see a $50,000 difference.
Yeah, and I don't agree with that because there's so many other variables that will lower what you're going to make. And I want to just grab a calculator here because I want to run some real quick dirty numbers on what that deal means to me. And because I'm looking at
So let me recap the numbers.
Sure.
You buy it for $60,000.
Uh-huh.
It needs $60,000 in repairs in order to reach its after repair value of $170,000. So your total all in.
Yeah, and we see my max on that all in for acquisition and rehab is right at 120.
Mm-hmm.
And that it does, you see, if my rehab includes the cost of my money, includes my holding costs, includes the other things that the taxes that I'm going to incur,
Well, see, with
the
this it
insurance
doesn't.
premiums, then that's not a rehab deal I want.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a rehab deal I want. It's not a rehab deal I tell my clients to take. That's now suddenly a deal that says I got to wholesale it.
Well, when an investor looks at a deal like this, right? They look at it as I'm all in, or I'm buying this thing for $60,000. Take that divided by 170. So they look at this like I'm buying this thing 35 cents on the dollar. Smoking deal. I've got to go out there and rehab this. Like most investors, that's like a dream to them, buying it at 35 cents on the dollar. But when you really run the numbers on something like that, and you're gonna, my kind of rule with this is that if I'm gonna go out there and rehab a deal for 60, right? If I'm gonna have $60,000 in it, I want to make over $60,000 on my profit, like cash in bank, not like projected. I mean, I paid my lender, I paid all the taxes, I paid absolutely everything. I want to make over $60,000.
Yes.
And
Because I'm taking a risk.
you're taking a big risk.
See, and this is the thing that I don't see anybody else put in their real estate investing playbook. It's the page called risk mitigation. Mm-hmm. Which, in order to mitigate risks, you got to first of all wake up and look at them and say, well, what are my potential risks here? The market can change while I'm rehabbing it. My money can go funny on me while I'm rehabbing it. My lender may call my note. Something may happen. There's some risk issues there, so I agree with you. You want to make sure you've got a large upside for this thing because you're taking a large risk.
Yep, my rule of thumb is I want to make at least like probably 120% of what the rehab was. At least 100%. Of what it is.
Okay.
That's my general rule that I go by. But see, most investors, dude, this right there, a deal like that, it tricks them.
Well, you see, this is where the spreadsheets and the formulas and all that other stuff, yeah, they're nice guides, but they're not recognizing real life. They're not recognizing what's happening. I mean, spreadsheets and formulas are wonderful, but when a hurricane blows into town, where's the box in your spreadsheet for that?
Exactly.
When things change, where's your spreadsheet for that? and I look at it and I go, I'm a big advocate, John, of looking at doing stuff with as little risk as possible, as little brain damage as possible, with as much long-term profit as possible.
Yeah.
Those are things I look for and how I want to do a deal.
Yeah.
And so I am very different than a lot of people who are hearing my voice right now, because I've got scars on my business. I've got scars on my business psyche that I pray to God you never have to worry about.
Yeah.
But I've been there, fought the battles, won them, crawled out of the pit, and I'm here telling you, don't go down that path. Because I've been there, bought the t-shirt, paid the bill, did the time.
Got the sticker.
And don't want to go back there
and
again.
I'm not going back there.
Yeah.
So you've got the deal, $60,000. It needs $60,000 in repair. So you're going to be all in technically for $120, and it has an after repair of $170. That's a $50,000 difference right there. That does not, account for private lender fees. That does not account for realtor fees. It does not account for
my exit strategy. I already know my exit strategy on those facts. My exit strategy on those facts is I want to find a contractor that can do the rehab cheaper than I can, and I want to wholesale to him.
That's exactly where I was going, because the second option, right? There's technically three that you could go down. Number one is you could rehab that deal, right? And that's honestly, that's where most investors are going to go. They're going to look at that one play in their playbook because it needs work. It's in a great area, great school zone.
But the moment you tell me most investors are going to do it, tells me I'm not going to do it.
That's me too.
The herd just went to the right. I'm going left.
I'm going left. So the other thing that you could do with this specific deal is you buy it for $60, same exact price. You could put nothing into the repairs. Nothing. Zero. And then really your end buyer, right? Your end buyer, you are looking for more of like a contractor type investor that's doing both. They probably only do a deal like every 2-3 months, something like that. It might be them. They might have a little bit of a crew, but they're going to do all this work themselves. That's who you're looking for with this.
Yep.
And they'll buy a deal like this because for you and I, right? For you and I, they're probably going to pay cash. They're not raising money, probably not. They're going to use a HELOC, or they're going to use
or business line of credit.
Business line of credit, something like that to fund this thing. So they're not going to have much, involved on that side of it. But when you break it down, they're also not going to have $60,000 in repairs.
And now they got a chance to make the kind of profit that you think they should make.
Right. Now they have the chance to do that. So in reality, you could take a deal like that, buy it for $60, okay, flip it to another contractor / investor, same thing, that has line of credit funds or something like that, which a lot of them do. And you could probably go flip that thing somewhere between 75 to 80.
Yeah.
You could flip it between 75 to 80, maybe 85 grand, and they're going to be all in this thing for 80. They're going to go fix it up for 40, so they're still going to be in at 120, and they're going to be happy. They're going to be super happy with
exactly.
that.
And if I get a chance to make $20,000 with little or no risk, compared to make potentially $50,000 with a lot of risk, give me the 20 with no risk.
Give me the 20 without any risk. Absolutely.
Bang, let me go do this again. Because by the time you're done with that rehab, I should have been able to do 2 or 3 more of these, and I've got less brain damage, less risk, and I've now made as much money as you have for my time.
Yes. Now, there's a third option, okay, that I want to pick your brain on. Jeff is, just for those of you guys that are listening, Jeff is amazing with deal structuring, and I'm going to throw something out at you. Okay, let's say that this was a little bit different scenario. Same numbers. Okay, so we're still able to buy this thing at 60. Okay, it still needs $60,000 in repairs. Okay, but let's just say that maybe it's not into the best school district, but maybe it's not bad, right? So it's still rehabable. Right? It's still rehabable. But let's just say that I don't have any access. I'm not going to wholesale this off. I'm not going to hold this out. I want to get creative with the financing. And let's just say that let's just say that I've got access to 60 grand. I cannot get 120. I can't do it. Right? And let's say that let's say that this house is all free and clear. So to recap for this, the house is free and clear. Okay. The seller, they don't necessarily need the money right now, but they want to get 60 grand out of it. but I don't have $60,000 for the buy side and the rehab, right? And I'm not going to wholesale this thing off. How could I structure this deal differently with the seller if I've got $60,000? That's all I got. I could either do the purchase or I could do the repairs, and I can't do both. How could I structure that deal differently with that seller where I still rehab it and they still get their 60, and I can go out there and take my $60,000 that I do have and still do that deal and make great money on that 60?
Oh, it's easy. That's easy. You get the seller to owner finance you,
Okay.
where they deed you the property, because you're going to start putting $60,000 into it, and in exchange you give them back a note for $60,000 that's going to earn interest at more than what they'll get at 3-4 times what they're going to make at the bank. So you're going to pay them 4 or 5% interest on their money, and that note is going to be secured by a first position mortgage. So now you've got the property. They don't get paid much of anything. Maybe they get interest in the meantime, whatever. But they don't get their $60,000 plus interest until you sell the property. So you put a 1-year balloon in the note, due in 1 year or upon sale of the property, and then most of your $60,000, all or the vast 99% of it, goes to fixing the property up. Now your risk has gone down.
My risk as a rehabber has gone down
because now I'm sharing that risk with the seller that has sold to me. But I'm also sharing a little bit of the profit with them, but not a lot of the profit, because I'm going to agree to pay them 5%, which is actually probably cheaper than what I could have borrowed the money on hard money terms.
Exactly.
So I'm ahead there.
Right.
They're taking a risk. Yes, the seller's got a risk because you could default. But what are they going to do? They're going to get a house that's either halfway demoed and rehabbed or what? You never know. So that's how I would structure that deal. I would structure the deal with owner financing, incentivize them to earn 5 or 6% on the $60,000 that they're financing you on, and put a balloon in there after 1 year or upon sale of the property, go in with my 60 grand, rehab it out, and boom, kick it.
How much profit would you actually give them? So let's say, this is where deals get really sexy. And to me, at least, because if you can structure a deal like that, like if I had $120,000, that's $120,000. And if I look at cash on cash, in $120,000 and I go out there and I'm supposed to make 50, but in reality I'm going to make 30. That's an okay cash on cash.
So here's what I'd come back to him as, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. I appreciate the fact that you're taking a risk and you're trusting me and that you're going to be my first lender because you're going to owner finance me on this deal. I want you to know that I want to pay you 5% on your $60,000 and I'll give you 10% of my net profit. After all expenses, after all rehab, after all closing costs and so on, I'll give you 10% of my net profit. That might be an extra $4 grand.
Right.
So these wonderful people who sold to you for $60,000 would have taken $60,000 cash. They 8 months later might be getting $66,000, $67,000 in their hands.
Right.
They've made really well.
And look at just structuring it a different way. Look at your cash on cash. You're in it for 60.
Right.
And let's say that you go out there and you make 30.
I've made 50% on my money.
You made 50% on your money. Do those numbers.
Yeah, I can handle 50% on my money on an annualized basis. Thank you.
Absolutely. And the thing of it is that I think, most real estate investors, they only have, like we're getting back to, they've got one route, right? They've got one route to run. It's like they see a property, they work the numbers. They might either do this deal or they might not as a rehab, right? They might or they might not. They're like, it's a little bit tight for me. I'm going to stick to John's rule, and I need to make at least 60 on a deal like that, and then they just kill the deal. But in reality, if you structure this 2 other ways, whether it's a wholesale, and you could go out and make $20,000 minus a little bit for some fees or whatnot, because you're going to want to double close that deal, okay? Or you could do an owner finance with that seller and make 50% on an annualized return, and that's like the mother of all.
Now, let's assume that you have a happy ending on that third scenario. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's assume you have a happy ending on it. So you made approximately $30,000 net after everything. Fantastic. Who do you think is going to become a walking billboard for you and your business after that deal?
That seller.
Mm-hmm. Who do you think is going to tell their friends on how they made over 10% on their money in less than a year?
That seller.
That seller.
They're going to go out there and see. That's another thing. You know, when you flip the chapter to the raising funds thing, I think that, you know, people that loan money out, they naturally want to brag to their buddies and their friends and their family how much money that they're making on their money, and it naturally makes people want to loan to you.
Yep. I've seen it. And it's, you know, it's a factor out there. I mean, let's face it, we are in a yield-starved environment. For those of you that don't know what I mean, that means we're living in an environment where interest rates are really, really low, and people who leave their money in certificates of deposit, aren't making any money on it. So people are starving for yield, and that's why we're seeing stupid money getting paid for Class A multifamily properties. Because, oh, well, the cap rate's still 4 or 5%, which is 5 times what the bank's paying me. And I don't have the volatility of the stock market. Okay, I got you, but there's other ways to find that yield. And, you know, and John, I'm a little different. I don't like to talk about the yields that I'm getting because I don't want to have to explain how I get them.
Right.
But I like good yields. Everybody does.
Everybody does.
And I like to do it with minimal brain damage. I like to do it with minimal risk. And I like to do it where it's a long-term wealth strategy where I'm maximizing any tax advantages. But that's we're veering way off. But we come back to this theme, and we're gonna hit this theme in podcast after podcast after podcast, which is you've got to have a fully developed playbook. And you've got to be able to analyze the deals to practice the playbook on it.
With multiple routes.
Exactly.
So in that specific deal that we just did, and again, you know, $60,000 for the buy, $60,000 in repairs, after repair value of $170, and we gave 3 different strategies or 3 different plays that we could have done as a real estate investor. The first one was rehab the deal and have a gross of $50,000, but it's really not even.
Right.
You're probably going to be somewhere around a $30,000 profit, and that's if you don't go over budget. That's if, you know, you probably sell this thing yourself, and you know you don't go over time. You stick with your lenders and everything else. You're going to be making about $30,000 on that specific deal. That smells like a $50,000 deal. The second play was you could go out and wholesale that deal off for $80,000. So you
make a quick 20 cash.
Make it quick 20 cash. And the third was you can owner finance that deal, and you could be all in for $60,000, and you could probably go make a 50% annualized return on your money, and then the seller wins more, and you possibly have a lender. Which play does Jeff Watson do?
Which play does Jeff Watson do? Jeff Watson's probably going to wholesale that thing off because it's less brain damage. And let's talk about that play a little bit deeper. Because the spread is what it is, $20,000, Jeff Watson's going to fund it, take title to it, and then resell it with a second closing a week, a couple of days, couple of weeks later. Depends upon how quickly I can get things to move through the title system and so on. But I'm going to double close on a spread that big.
Yeah.
I'm going to double close on a spread that big, and I'm going to double close on a spread that big for a couple of reasons. Because I want to prove that I've got ownership of the property when I go ahead and sell it. Because I can't market the house until I own it. I want to be able to follow the rules and market assets that I own. The second thing is I just don't want my rehabber who's coming in behind me, the contractor guy, I don't want him to be like, well, he made 20 grand for doing nothing. Well, no, I didn't make 20 grand for doing nothing. I made 20 grand by finding you a good deal. Mm-hmm. By solving somebody else's problem and finding you a good deal. That's why I make 20 grand. So that's why I'm going to double close it. I don't want that grumble mumble to be happening before the closing. After it's done, after he funds his purchase for $80,000, the dude can cuss me out. I don't care. But he's not going to get another deal from me.
Right.
But you know, if that's the way he is, then he shouldn't have been on my buyer's list to begin with.
And for those that are listening in right now, you know, in a deal like that, like as far as like double closing that deal and what Jeff just described, it's you're taking a deal that you're buying for $60,000, you're getting that deal funded, you're letting it season a couple of weeks-ish, right?
At the most.
At the most, you're letting it season for a couple of weeks, and you're flipping that to another investor for $80,000 $1,000.
Yeah, the strategy that they refer to it is called wholetailing.
Right.
Because I'm going to buy it on a wholesale and I'm going to sell it as a retail, because once I close on it, I can get my favorite aggressive, high-octane, meat-eating, high-producing real estate agent to list that sucker on the MLS and drive a bunch of people into it.
And, me personally, and the deals that I do, I love that strategy right now, is to go out there and buy a property and list it onto the MLS. And you know why I love that so much? Is because other investors are so hungry. They're so hungry for deals, and honestly, they're overpaying for deals.
They are way overpaying for deals, and I can tell you that the clients that I have across this nation that are doing that strategy, they are reporting 2017 is a record year for them. Mm-hmm. Record year. They're making more money off of wholetailing than any other way. They're working harder to get the deals.
Yep.
But if they got them and they're blowing them out that way, they've got other investors who don't work as hard as they can or can't work as hard as they can to get the deals, paying a premium to get them.
I mean, same thing like auction properties and all these other different sources that, investors are trying to go out there and find inventory with is, investors are struggling. They're struggling to find inventory right now, but honestly, it's where they're looking to find this inventory at. I mean, so many investors are going more of like a marketing approach and direct mail and, oh my gosh, I got to get leads. But in reality, the best way to go out there and find inventory in this market and into the future markets is to go out there and build them through relationships or get them from referral. And so many investors, they have that so wrong in their head, and the reason it is because they think that they've got to know all these people in order to generate leads. But what if you take instead of going to sheriff's auctions and you're not bidding on properties, you're trying to let them bid on all the properties, let the crowd bid on all the properties, but you're more or less there to network with the crowd and see if they've got any deals. Or maybe with probate, instead of actually you sitting there and mailing to, the house or the heirs or whatever it is, why don't we actually get the deal from a relationship, like a probate attorney? And I'll tell you, that's exactly the way that our entire business has went. It's finding deals is from the relationship route. We find all of our deals directly through what we call the 90-10 rule. 90% of our deals come from relationships, just like what I just said, like the auctions and, like the auctions or the probate attorneys, or at the same time, the 10%, the 90-10, 90% of our deals come from relationships. The 10% is coming from marketing, whether it's, direct mail or bandit signs or whatever it might be. And that same thing goes with your time. Your time, 90% of your time goes into finding deals through relationships or, getting your relationships closer to people that can get you to the deals. And then 10% of your time goes through, finding deals through marketing. And so many investors, they've got that twisted. They focus 100% of their efforts on the 10%, and then they wonder why they don't do deals. So, guys, this has been a phenomenal podcast, episode number 2. So I want you to go out there and download the show notes. We've got them at wholesalereformation.com. So go and download these show notes at wholesalereformation.com. Up at the top, you will see podcasts. Click on podcasts, and then you will find episode number 2 right there, and that is where you will download the show notes. So, been a phenomenal episode so far, and we're going to be talking a lot more about finding deals. We're going to talk a lot more about this 90-10 rule in future episodes so that you can go out there and be that powerhouse for finding deals that you've always been looking for. Finding deals that nobody else can get but you. So go download those show notes at wholesalereformation.com, and I will see you guys on future podcasts. See you guys. Win. And I mean you want to win big. You master getting deals from relationships and you develop follow-up systems. There's not another podcast out there as powerful as this real estate investor playbook. It doesn't exist.